My name is Emma Lawson, and 6 months ago, I was nobody special. Just a 32-year-old nurse living in a cramped apartment above a bakery in Brookhaven, a sleepy coastal town where gossip spread faster than the ocean breeze. My days were predictable. 12-hour shifts at St. Clair's Hospital, microwave dinners eaten in scrubs, and quiet nights spent listening to the waves crash against the pier outside my window. I thought I knew who I was. Steady, invisible, safe. Then came that phone call. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday. I had just come home from an exhausting double shift when my phone rang, lighting up the dark kitchen counter. Unknown number. Normally I'd have ignored it, but some instinct, made me answer. "Miss Lawson?" The voice was male, formal, and hesitant. "This is Henry Cole. I was your godmother's attorney. I'm afraid I have some difficult news." I remember gripping the counter, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. Godmother, attorney. The two words didn't belong in the same sentence. "What happened?" I managed. "There's been an accident. Miss Ellis didn't make it." The world went silent. The refrigerator's hum vanished. The waves outside stopped crashing. Everything fell away except the dull roar in my head. Margaret Ellis, my godmother, mentor, and the closest thing I had to family, was gone. For a long moment, I couldn't move. Then, as if on autopilot, I sank to the floor. The only thing I could hear was my own breathing and the sound of something shattering. Maybe the mug I'd knocked off the counter, maybe my heart. I met Margaret when I was 8 years old. My parents had just divorced, and I'd been bounced between their houses like luggage they couldn't agree on who should keep. Margaret was my mother's college friend, a tall, elegant woman with silver-streaked hair and eyes that noticed everything. She started inviting me over after school, teaching me how to sketch buildings and mix concrete for her model houses. "You have steady hands, Emma," she'd say with a smile. "Steady hands can build steady lives." Over time, she became more than a mentor. She became my home. So when I stood in the rain outside her funeral 2 weeks later, watching people who barely knew her dab at fake tears with designer handkerchiefs, anger began to outweigh grief. My father, Martin Lawson, strutted around like the bereaved heir to a fortune he'd long been cut off from. My cousin Vanessa posed near the flower arrangements, whispering to a photographer about which angle was tasteful. And my Uncle Charles, who hadn't visited Margaret in 5 years, complained loudly about the catering. I wanted to scream at all of them. You didn't even like her. You didn't know her. But I didn't. I stood silent, hands clenched in my coat pockets, watching them transform grief into theater. 3 days later, I received another call from Henry Cole, the same attorney whose voice had shattered my night. "Miss Lawson," he said, "I know this is a difficult time, but Miss Ellis left detailed instructions for the reading of her will. She specifically requested your presence." "Of course," I said, still numb. "Just me?" A pause. "Your father, uncle, and cousin will also be attending." The chill that ran down my spine had nothing to do with the weather. When I arrived at Cole & Partners, the old brick law office Margaret had trusted for decades, I found them already waiting. My father was tapping his Rolex against the mahogany table. Vanessa was scrolling through her phone, her nails glinting red under the chandelier. My Uncle Charles sat stiffly, pretending to grieve, but mostly looking bored. Henry greeted me gently. "Emma, I'm very sorry for your loss. Margaret thought the world of you." I nodded, unsure whether to smile or cry. The air in the room felt too thick to breathe. The scent of leather, the tick of the wall clock, the sound of paper sliding from Henry's briefcase, it all built an unbearable suspense. Then Henry began to read. "I, Margaret Ellis, being of sound mind and body, hereby declare this my last will and testament." My father leaned back, smirking, already confident of what he thought was coming. But as the words continued, the smirk disappeared. "I leave my entire estate, including my company, properties, and assets, to my goddaughter, Emma Lawson, whom I regard as the daughter I never had." The silence that followed was louder than a scream. My father's face drained of color. Vanessa blinked, as if waiting for Henry to correct himself. Uncle Charles's jaw tightened. Then it began. "This is absurd," my father thundered, standing so fast his chair toppled. "You can't just cut family out like that." Henry adjusted his glasses calmly. Miss Ellis made her intentions clear. The will is legally binding and verified by 2 independent witnesses. Vanessa leaned toward me, her perfume cloying. "Emma, this must be a mistake. You're not equipped to handle this kind of responsibility. Maybe we can help." I looked at her, heart pounding. Help? Or control? She smiled thinly. "We're family. We should share." My uncle slammed his palm on the table. "You think you can waltz in here and take everything? You're not even blood." "I didn't ask for any of this," I said quietly. "Margaret made her choice." My father pointed a trembling finger at me. "You manipulated her. Don't think we won't challenge this." Henry closed the folder slowly, the faintest sigh escaping him. Miss Ellis anticipated that possibility. She left a personal message for all of you. He pressed a button, and a video flickered to life on the monitor. Margaret's face appeared, serene, dignified, heartbreakingly alive. "If you're watching this," she began, "it means I've moved on. I know some of you will feel anger about my choices, but understand this: inheritance should reflect not bloodlines but values. I have watched who visits, who calls, who cares, and who only appears when money is involved. My goddaughter Emma has shown loyalty, integrity, and compassion. The rest of you have shown me otherwise." Vanessa gasped. My father muttered something under his breath. Margaret's gaze seemed to pierce right through the screen. "I leave my estate to Emma because she understands what it means to build something, not to take it. If that offends you, then you've proven my point." The video ended. For a full minute, no one moved. Then my father turned to me, eyes cold. "You'll regret this," he said. "Regret what?" I whispered. "Being loved for the right reasons?" He didn't answer. He just walked out, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. That night, I sat in my car outside the law office for hours, the envelope of legal papers heavy in my lap. I kept replaying Margaret's voice in my head, steady and sure even beyond the grave. I didn't know it then, but that moment, the night her will was read, was the real beginning of the story. Because by morning, my father would declare war. Because Vanessa would decide to destroy my reputation. Because someone would break into Margaret's house before dawn. And I would realize my inheritance was never just about money. It was about survival. And before the year was over, I'd discover that the most dangerous thing about family isn't how quickly they can turn on you. It's how far they'll go when they believe you have what they deserve. The next morning, the sky over Brookhaven was a dull shade of steel, heavy and cold, like it knew what was coming. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's face at the will reading, pale with rage, eyes sharp as broken glass. The kind of look that promised retribution, not grief. I thought maybe it was just bluster. Maybe he'd cool off, accept Margaret's decision, and move on. But by 8 a.m., the first shot had already been fired. My landlord called. "Miss Lawson, I'm sorry, but your rent's overdue, and I've received a notice to terminate your lease. Apparently, your guarantor has withdrawn their sponsorship." I froze. My guarantor, the person who had co-signed my lease, was my father. It was a small kindness from years ago when my nursing salary wasn't enough to qualify. I'd never missed a payment, but now, with a single phone call, he had made me homeless. "That must be a mistake," I said, voice trembling. "I wish it were," he replied quietly. "You have 7 days to vacate." I hung up, numb. My father had always been controlling, but this was different. This was punishment. I drove to work in silence, barely registering the winter rain tapping against the windshield. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. I wasn't just fighting grief anymore. I was fighting the people who shared my blood. At noon, my phone buzzed again. A text from my cousin Vanessa lit up the screen. "Meet us at Dad's house at 6. We need to talk about Margaret's estate. Don't be stupid." The message felt more like a threat than an invitation. Their house sat on the cliffside overlooking the bay, a modern mansion of glass and arrogance. I parked my aging Honda next to their line of luxury cars and sat for a moment, staring at my reflection in the rain-slicked window. I looked small, tired, and out of place. Inside, the air smelled of expensive candles and false civility. My father stood near the fireplace, swirling a glass of scotch. My Uncle Charles leaned against the wall, arms folded. Vanessa lounged on the couch, phone in hand, smirking. "Well, there she is," my father said, "our newly crowned heiress." I ignored the mockery. "Why did you cancel my lease?" "Actions have consequences, Emma." His tone was almost bored. "You think you can keep millions that rightfully belong to your family and still expect our help? That's not how this works." "Rightfully belongs?" I repeated, my voice low. "Margaret's money was hers to give, and she chose me." "That old woman was confused," Uncle Charles snapped. "You manipulated her, filled her head with guilt." "She was lucid," I said. "She filmed a message to prove it." Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, do you even know what you've inherited? You couldn't manage a grocery list, let alone an architectural firm. Be reasonable, Emma. You can't handle this." My father's voice softened, a tone he reserved for business deals, not family. "Here's what we're proposing. You transfer the estate to me. I'll distribute it fairly among us. You'll keep 10%, maybe a bit more if you cooperate." I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. 10% of what's already mine? He placed his glass down hard. "Watch your tone. You're walking a dangerous line." "No," I said quietly. "You are." The room fell silent. My heartbeat echoed in my ears. Then my uncle stepped forward, his voice dripping with threat. "Don't test us, Emma. You might have her money now, but you have no idea how quickly things can change." I stared at him, unflinching. "Is that supposed to scare me?" Vanessa smirked. "It should." By the time I left, the sky was pitch black. Rain lashed across the cliffs as I drove home, headlights cutting through the storm. Halfway down the coast road, I noticed another car in my rearview mirror, a sleek black sedan with tinted windows. It stayed behind me for miles, matching my turns exactly. My pulse quickened. I switched lanes. So did they. I made a sharp right toward the marina, tires skidding slightly on the wet pavement. The car followed. I pulled into the parking lot near the pier, slammed on the brakes, and grabbed my phone. Before I could dial, the sedan stopped 20 feet behind me. Its headlights flicked off. I sat frozen, hands shaking. Then, slowly, the car reversed and drove away. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the building sounded like footsteps, every passing car a threat. The next morning, I called Henry. "Henry, I think they're following me." "Who?" "My father, Vanessa." "I don't know." "Someone in the family." There was a pause. "You're not imagining it," he said grimly. "I received notice this morning. They've filed a preliminary petition to contest the will." I gripped the phone. "Can they win?" "Not likely," he said. "Margaret's documentation is ironclad. But Emma, there's something else you should know. She expected this. She left. A second layer of protection." He asked me to meet him at Margaret's house that evening. When I arrived, the rain had stopped. The sea was calm again, eerily still. The house looked exactly as it had the night she died, her shawl still draped over the armchair, her sketchbook open on the table. Henry greeted me at the door, holding a manila envelope. "Your godmother was meticulous," he said. "She left instructions sealed for you alone. And one more thing, she also left you the contact information for someone named Daniel Kim." I frowned. "Daniel?" "Her business partner. He's expecting your call." I opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a handwritten letter in Margaret's graceful script. "Emma, my darling girl. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone, And the people I warned you about are circling. Don't trust their apologies or promises. Everything I've built is yours now, but not just the assets, the responsibility. Daniel, Henry, and Amara will help you. They are loyal as family should have been. Keep them close. And whatever you do, never sign anything they bring you without Henry's approval. My throat tightened as I read her final line. The house is yours now. You're not alone, even if it feels like it. Remember, truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to stand firm. That night, I walked through every room of her home, each step echoing against hardwood floors. It was strange, peaceful, yet full of ghosts. Her presence was everywhere, the scent of jasmine tea, the half-finished model of a seaside museum on her desk, a photo of us at my nursing graduation framed beside her bed. I stood in the doorway and whispered, "You knew they'd come for me, didn't you?" The wind outside howled in response, rattling the windows. I didn't realize it yet, but Margaret hadn't just left me an inheritance. She had left me a map, one I'd soon have to follow to uncover the secrets my family had buried for years. Because the next morning, when I checked my phone, there were 12 missed calls, 4 voicemails, and a text from Vanessa that made my blood run cold. If you don't hand everything over by tomorrow, you'll wish you never opened that will. I stared at the screen, the weight of Margaret's letter pressing against my palm. They thought I'd break. They thought I'd surrender. But they had no idea what kind of woman Margaret Ellis had raised, and what I was willing to do to protect her legacy. By dawn the next day, I knew things had escalated beyond family drama. It was war. My phone rang again just as the sun broke through the mist. Henry's name flashed across the screen. "Emma," he said, his voice steady but urgent. "I need you to stay calm and listen carefully. Your family has already reached out to 3 different law firms overnight. They're serious about contesting the will." "I expected that," I said quietly, staring out the window of Margaret's study, where gulls circled the gray ocean below. "There's more," Henry continued. "Vanessa contacted the press. She's claiming you manipulated Margaret into disinheriting them." I gripped the edge of the desk. "She what?" "She's feeding them lies, Emma, painting you as a gold digger who took advantage of an elderly woman. We'll handle it legally, but public perception can get messy." I wanted to scream, to throw something, to shake the ghosts of my family and demand why they couldn't just stop. But Margaret's letter echoed in my mind. Truth doesn't need to shout, it just needs to stand firm. "Let them talk," I said finally. "We'll fight with facts." Henry hesitated for a moment, then said, "There's someone I want you to meet today, someone your godmother trusted more than anyone. Daniel Kim." Daniel arrived at noon. He was tall, calm, with the quiet confidence of someone who had seen chaos and learned how to navigate through it. His handshake was firm, his gaze sharp, but kind. "Margaret always said you were the only person she could truly count on," he said softly, scanning the familiar rooms. "She used to talk about you like you were her own daughter." That alone almost broke me. He and Henry sat me down at the dining table, spreading out folders, binders, and flash drives filled with company records. Daniel explained that Margaret had structured her business, Ellis Design Group, in layers of protection. Ownership divided through trusts and silent partnerships, designed to keep it immune from takeover. "Your father and uncle tried several times to gain control," Daniel said, sliding one folder toward me. "Margaret anticipated every attempt. She transferred voting rights to you 18 months ago, quietly. You already own controlling interest." I blinked. "She did that before she died?" "Yes. She wanted you to be ready before anyone knew you'd inherited anything." Henry nodded. "Margaret wasn't impulsive. Every move she made had purpose. She knew this day would come." I leaned back, overwhelmed. "They'll lose, won't they?" "Legally, yes," Henry said. "But people like your father don't lose gracefully." He was right. That evening, as the storm clouds rolled in again, headlights flashed through the rain outside the gate. I peered through the curtains, and my stomach turned cold. My father's car. I hadn't invited him. Before I could react, pounding shook the front door. "Emma!" His voice was muffled but unmistakable. "Open up, we're talking about this now." I took a deep breath, unlocked the door, and stepped back. My father stood in the doorway, drenched in rain, his eyes dark with fury. Behind him were Vanessa and Uncle Charles. "You shouldn't be here," I said firmly. "This is my sister's house," he spat. "You think you can lock us out?" "It's not yours anymore," I replied quietly. He brushed past me, tracking rain across the hardwood floor. "You're out of your depth. Hand everything over and we'll forget this ever happened." Vanessa smirked from behind him, holding up a folder. "We've already spoken to investors. You don't even understand what this company is worth. But don't worry, we'll take care of it for you." I felt my pulse hammering in my throat. "You'll leave now," I said, "or I'll call the police." "Go ahead," my father sneered. "Let's see what the papers say when they find out their local nurse threw her grieving family out of a dead woman's house." Lightning flashed outside, illuminating his face, a portrait of arrogance and fury. He took a step closer. "You always thought you were better than us. Margaret spoiled you. She filled your head with nonsense about values and integrity. Do you really think those things matter in the real world?" I swallowed hard. They mattered to her. "Then she was a fool," he snapped. That did it. I took a step forward, voice steady. "Get out." He hesitated, surprised. "What did you say?" "You heard me. Get out. This isn't about you or your greed or your pride. This is about what she built and what she trusted me to protect. I won't let you tear that down." For a moment, no one spoke. Rain hammered against the windows. Then slowly he smiled, a cruel, twisted smile. "You'll regret this," he said softly. "You've made powerful enemies, Emma." He turned and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. Vanessa lingered in the doorway, her voice dripping with venom. "You think you've won? This isn't over. You'll see how fast the world turns on you when we're done." Then she left. The silence afterward was deafening. I locked the door and sank to the floor, my hands trembling. The weight of everything pressed down on me, the inheritance, the isolation, the danger. I wanted to crawl into Margaret's old chair, wrap myself in her shawl, and pretend none of it was real. But I knew running wasn't an option. When Daniel and Henry returned later that night, I told them everything. Henry listened silently, his expression hardening. "They've crossed a line," he said. "We'll take legal measures immediately, restraining orders, security details, whatever's necessary." Daniel nodded. "Margaret always believed preparation was power. She left you tools for this, Emma. Use them." "What kind of tools?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "The kind that turn truth into armor." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a USB drive. Everything they've ever done to her, every attempt to exploit, deceive, or blackmail is documented here. Margaret kept it all. She wanted you to have proof in case they ever came for you. I took the drive, the metal cool against my palm. That night, I plugged it into my laptop and watched the past unfold in brutal clarity. Emails from my father demanding money, texts from Vanessa mocking Margaret's outdated ideals, financial records showing loans that were never repaid. There were even audio clips, recorded conversations between Margaret and my uncle, where he threatened to force her hand if she didn't sell him part of the company. Every secret they thought buried was alive, sitting in the palm of my hand. The next morning, the headlines hit. Local nurse accused of manipulating elderly mentor for millions. The article quoted anonymous family sources, describing me as unstable, obsessive, and financially motivated. My picture, taken from my hospital's website, was plastered across every social feed in town. My stomach turned as I read the comments. People I didn't even know called me a fraud, a liar, a thief. I called Henry immediately. "They've gone public," I said, my voice cracking. "I saw," he replied grimly. "Don't respond. Let me handle it. But Emma, I think it's time we take this fight out of the shadows." "How?" He smiled. by showing the world who Margaret Ellis really was and who she trusted to carry her legacy. By afternoon, Daniel and Henry had arranged a press conference at the firm's downtown headquarters. Reporters flooded the lobby, microphones flashing, cameras ready. I stood behind the podium, palms damp, the USB drive in Henry's pocket containing everything, the truth, the proof, the weapon Margaret had left me. "This will destroy them," Daniel whispered. "No," I said softly. "It'll expose them. That's all." When the cameras turned on, I took a breath and began. 6 months ago, I lost my godmother, Margaret Ellis, a woman who built her life on integrity, compassion, and hard work. She taught me that legacy isn't measured in money, but in meaning. I inherited her company not because of bloodlines, but because of trust. And today, I'm here to honor that trust by sharing the truth. I revealed the records, the evidence, the years of exploitation Margaret had endured silently. The crowd murmured as Henry displayed the proof, emails, audits, signed documents. By the time it was over, there was no doubt who the real manipulators were. I looked straight into the cameras and said the last words Margaret ever wrote to me. Truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to stand firm. And that's exactly what I planned to do. But that night, as I returned home, headlights flared across the driveway. I froze. My father's car again. Only this time, he wasn't alone. Inside the car, through the rain-streaked glass, I saw Vanessa's smirk and my uncle's cold stare. The engine revved once, loud and deliberate, before the car rolled backward and disappeared into the dark. A warning, a promise. The war wasn't over. Not yet. And I knew the next move had to be mine. By the time dawn touched the edge of the sea, I was done being afraid. The storm outside had passed, but another one was building. Quiet, deliberate, unstoppable. I had spent the night at Margaret's desk, surrounded by papers, flash drives, and legal folders that smelled faintly of dust and lemon polish. My eyes burned, but my purpose had never been clearer. They wanted a war? I would end it, with the truth. Henry arrived early, bringing coffee and the calm precision of a man who'd already fought this battle in his head. "Everything's ready," he said, sliding a thick envelope across the desk. "Copies of the documentation, restraining orders, ownership certificates. Once you sign these, the estate is fully shielded. They can't touch a cent." I nodded, signing one paper after another until my hand cramped. "What about them?" I asked quietly. "They won't stop." Henry hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Your godmother thought of that too. She left instructions for a private meeting. All key associates, longtime staff, even a judge she trusted. You'll understand soon enough." By 10 o'clock, the house was alive with quiet movement. Cars lined the driveway. Daniel, Amara, the housekeeper, Mrs. Lively, and even the town's retired judge, Robert Hendricks, a close friend of Margaret's. The living room became a war room, files stacked, coffee cups steaming, tension humming like electricity. "She predicted everything," Daniel said, his voice low but admiring. "Even your father's timing." Right on cue, the sharp screech of tires echoed from outside. I didn't need to look. I knew who it was. "Positions," Henry murmured. The front door swung open before I could respond. My father strode in, flanked by Vanessa and Uncle Charles, their expressions carved in fury and false confidence. "What is this?" he barked, glancing at the gathered people. "A circus?" "No," I said evenly. "A reckoning." Judge Hendricks rose slowly from his seat. "Richard Lawson," he said, voice calm but heavy with authority. "As per the late Margaret Ellis's request, this is a formal arbitration. You and your relatives will be heard, but you'll also face the evidence of your conduct." My father froze. "You can't be serious." "I'm very serious," the judge replied, "and I suggest you sit down." Vanessa scoffed, tossing her hair. "Oh, please, what's she going to do? Show us some emotional letters about love and honesty?" "Not exactly," Henry said. He pressed a button on the remote. The television flickered to life. revealing a video of Margaret sitting in her study, filmed just a few months before her death. Her eyes were bright, her tone steady. "If you're watching this, it means my fears were justified. Richard, Charles, Vanessa, I loved you, but you've mistaken love for obligation. I built everything I had through hard work, not entitlement. I gave chances, forgiveness, and more money than I should have, and still, you came back wanting more." My father's jaw tightened. Margaret continued, her voice sharper now. "Emma never asked me for anything. She visited because she cared. She represents what our family could have been. Honest, kind, resilient. I leave her my estate because I trust her to build, not destroy. The rest of you will have to live with the choices you've made." When the screen went dark, silence filled the room. You could hear the waves crashing outside. Vanessa's voice trembled as she tried to recover her poise. "This doesn't prove anything. It's just her opinion." Henry spoke calmly. "Then perhaps this will." He opened the next file and began reading aloud. Loan agreements unpaid, attempts to forge signatures, emails between Vanessa and her father plotting to access Margaret's retirement accounts. Each revelation hit like a thunderclap. My uncle paled. "That's not true." Daniel tapped the laptop beside him. "It's all time-stamped and backed up on 3 servers. She kept everything." Vanessa rose from her chair, shouting, "You can't do this. This is a setup." "Enough!" my father thundered. "All of you are vultures feeding on her corpse." He pointed at me. "You most of all. You turned her against us." I met his eyes, those same gray eyes I'd inherited, though his were now filled with hate. "I didn't turn her against you," I said softly. "You did that yourselves, every time you treated her like a bank instead of a person." He took a step toward me, rage boiling over. "You ungrateful—" "Careful," Judge Hendricks said sharply. "Another threat, and I'll have you escorted out by law enforcement." Henry stood. "Actually, we've already prepared for that." He nodded toward the hallway and 2 police officers stepped inside, calm but unmistakably present. My father's expression faltered. For the first time, I saw fear beneath the fury. The next hour unfolded like the closing of a trap. Every attempt they made to argue was met with hard evidence. Every accusation was countered with Margaret's documentation, recordings, and written testimony. When it was finally over, the judge stood. "The will stands. The inheritance is protected under the law. Any further interference will result in criminal charges for fraud, coercion, and defamation. Is that clear?" My father said nothing. Vanessa was crying silently, mascara streaking her cheeks. Uncle Charles looked broken, staring at the floor like a man who'd just seen his reflection for the first time. Slowly, one by one, they left. The moment the door closed, my knees gave out. I sank into the chair, shaking, not from fear, but from release. Henry placed a hand on my shoulder. "It's over," he said softly. "You did it." I exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. "No," I whispered. "We did it. Margaret did it." Weeks passed. The media turned. The same outlets that had branded me manipulative now ran headlines like "The Truth About the Ellis Legacy" and "Greed Exposed in Family Feud." Public sympathy swung back in my favor, but I barely cared about the coverage. What mattered was peace. For the first time, the house felt alive again. The tension had lifted, replaced by laughter, quiet music, and the smell of coffee brewing in the mornings. I spent my days finalizing the launch of the Ellis Foundation for Education and Design, just as Margaret had dreamed. Daniel and I worked side by side to fund scholarships for underprivileged students. The old workshop became a studio for young architects. At night, I'd sit on the balcony overlooking the sea, wrapped in Margaret's shawl, watching the light flicker across the waves. Months later, my father sent one final letter. It wasn't angry this time, just tired. "You were right. I lost sight of what mattered. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope one day you'll understand why I did what I did." I never replied, but I kept the letter. Maybe that was forgiveness enough. On the one-year anniversary of Margaret's passing, we hosted a scholarship ceremony in her honor. 20 students received full funding for college, each one a reflection of her vision: builders, dreamers, believers. As I stood on the small stage, looking out at their hopeful faces, emotion rose in my throat. "I used to think inheritance was about money," I said to the crowd, "but Margaret taught me it's about what you build with what you're given, about who you become when no one's watching, and about standing your ground, even when standing alone." Applause filled the hall, warm and genuine. I stepped outside afterward, the evening air cool and salted by the sea. Somewhere beyond the horizon, I imagined Margaret smiling, that quiet, knowing smile she always wore when I doubted myself. "I did it," I whispered. "We did it." The moon shimmered across the waves as I walked back toward the house that was once hers, but now, finally, felt like ours. A home built on strength, forgiveness, and truth. They say money changes people. Maybe that's true, but I've learned something deeper. Money reveals people. And when the dust settles, what you keep isn't the fortune, it's the freedom. Freedom to live with integrity. Freedom to choose peace over power. Freedom to protect what's right, even when the world tells you not to. That, I realized, was Margaret's final gift. And as 2025 drew to a close, I finally understood her words. Legacy isn't what you leave behind, it's what you set in motion.